You know, some stories stay with you. Not because they're just tragic, but because they remind us of how quickly things can spiral into darkness. This is one of those stories. It starts with a girl, Shannon Gilbert. She was just 24. On May 1, 2010, she made a panicked 911 call. Not just a regular emergency call, this one lasted 23 minutes. She said someone was chasing her. She knocked on doors, screamed for help, and then vanished. People thought maybe she drowned. Maybe she was just scared and ran. But something didn't sit right. Not with her family. And not with the community that would later come to know her name. When police started searching for Shannon, they weren't expecting what they found. In December 2010, months later, they discovered human remains along Ocean Parkway in Long Island. But it wasn't Shannon. Instead, they found the remains of 4 other young women. Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, Amber Lynn Costello. All of them had worked as escorts. All of them had gone missing. And all of them had been carefully wrapped in burlap sacks. It was like someone had placed them there, methodically. Like it was routine. Ocean Parkway wasn't just a stretch of road anymore, it had become a graveyard. Quiet. Hidden. Almost like the killer didn't want them to be found, but also didn't want to forget where they were. Now listen, these weren't just names. These were women with families. With stories. With struggles. Maureen had 2 kids. She had dreams of being a writer. Melissa used to talk to her sister on the phone every night. Megan? She was a young mom, only 22, trying to support her daughter. And Amber, she loved painting, believed in second chances. They weren't perfect. None of us are. They took risks. They trusted people they shouldn't have. But they were trying to survive in a world that often doesn't treat women, especially vulnerable women, fairly. As investigators widened the search, more remains turned up. A toddler. An unidentified man. Skull fragments. It was no longer just about 4 women. It was about something much bigger. Something far more terrifying. Despite all this, the case stalled. Years passed. Leads dried up. No arrests. No answers. Shannon's body was finally found in December 2011, over a year later. But her death was ruled accidental. Authorities said she drowned. But her mother, Mari, didn't buy it. And honestly, neither did a lot of people who had been following this case. Mari Gilbert became a fierce voice for justice. She didn't let her daughter's case be buried with the others. She did interviews. She pushed for new investigations. And in a heartbreaking twist, Mari herself was later killed by another of her daughters during a mental health crisis. It's a tragedy stacked on top of a tragedy. For years, it felt like the case was stuck. Until 2022. In 2022, a new task force was formed. They brought in federal agents, top investigators, and for once, it felt like real momentum. They started using newer tools, forensic genealogy, cell tower triangulation, digital tracking. They went back over burner phone records. Dug into calls made to the victims. Followed the path of those phones. Cross-referenced with locations. Even trash. One key lead came from something simple, a pizza crust. You see, this suspect had tossed out pizza, and the DNA matched hairs found on the burlap the women were wrapped in. Hair that had been sitting in evidence boxes for over a decade. It was the break everyone had been waiting for. In July 2023, police arrested Rex Hoyerman. He was an architect. A husband. A father of 2. Lived in Massapequa, Long Island. Seemed like a regular guy. Quiet. Lived in the same house for years. But when investigators dug into his life, they found something disturbing. Burner phones used to call the victims. Internet searches about torture, killings. And that pizza crust? The DNA was a match. Inside his home, locked safes, disturbing materials, fake IDs. His wife and kids were completely shocked. They had no idea who they were really living with. Hoyerman has been charged with 3 murders. But he's suspected in more. Even with Hoyerman in custody, so many questions remain. Who was the toddler? Was she related to one of the victims? And what about the unidentified male remains? Were there multiple killers using the same dumping ground? Or did the killer evolve over time? And maybe the hardest question, how did this go unnoticed for so long? There were early warnings. Victims' families raised alarms. But for years, they were ignored. Some say because the victims were sex workers, the system didn't care enough. Others believe early investigators were overwhelmed or simply made mistakes. But in the end, justice delayed is justice denied. And for many of these families, justice still hasn't arrived. This story isn't just about one man. It's about a system. About society. About how easily certain lives get overlooked. And how long families have to fight just to be heard. Rex Hoyerman might face trial. But that's just one part of the story. There are still victims without names. Still mothers without answers. Still cold cases growing colder by the day. If you're still here, listening, thank you. Because every time we tell these stories, we give voice to the voiceless. We remember those the world forgot. This is Buried Truths. Subscribe for more real cases, more stories that matter, and more names that deserve to be said out loud. If this story moved you, share it. Comment your thoughts. Let us know which case we should cover next. New episodes every week. Because the truth doesn't stay buried forever.